Before the success stories, the progress, there was you. You who made a choice to grow, to inspire, to overcome your own challenges. At NASM, we're in service of your limitless potential because when you keep growing, we all get stronger. And we'll never stop making your journey our mission. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified personal trainer.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts, here with my friend and co-host, as always, Ken Miller. How are you?
Doing well, Wendy. Thank you very much. How you doing? You looking great, as always.
I'm doing well. Today's topic, we are going to talk about 5 misconceptions that we often hear, especially around the topic of corrective exercise. Ken, I know you get this very often from your clients. There are so many questions that are that I know I get when it's, where do I put it? How do I do it? You know, is it time sensitive? Do I need equipment? So we are going to discuss, I think, some of the key components specifically of corrective exercise.
And this, I think, as we go through these 5 misconceptions, are basically just points that people need to better understand when the topic of corrective exercise comes up. Is just there's not a whole lot of history behind it relative to the fitness industry, because you can talk about dumbbells, barbells, people will know what that means. But when you say corrective exercise, sometimes it goes to rehab, sometimes it's about post-rehab. But I think what we're going to do today, or actually what I'm hoping we're going to do today, is clarify for both personal trainers, movement specialists, strength coaches, and the average exercise enthusiast on what it actually means to go through a corrective exercise program. Put those air quotes out there because sometimes, well, it means different things to different people. So hopefully we can clear the air a little bit as to how corrective exercise can help improve lives, or at least how you move in general.
Indeed. Well, number one, I'm going to go ahead and just dive in. Number one is people think they have to do it all the time. And there is some truth about that if you know what you're doing, I think, first and foremost. However, I am one of those people that love instant gratification. So when I do work with my clients and I do an assessment and we're finding some issues where we know we can correct them so they move better, feel better, perform better, which is our ultimate goal for most everyone, they want to do it. They are excited about it. It's not something that's super fancy. It's really hard because we are identifying muscles that are often underactive. So therefore, when we do the workout and they are moving better that moment, they feel it's a one and done. And that is definitely not the case. As we know, the body transforms itself every 4 to 6 weeks if you're consistent with doing something. However, consistency is always going to be key.
100%. And I think that's where people, when it comes to working with somebody who has a corrective exercise or CEX or something along those lines, CES as it relates to NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine, for those of you that don't know what NASM means. But I mean, it is one of those things where if you do the assessment, and that's one of the key indicators of what determines a corrective exercise program, is that, first of all, you have been assessed and assessed for some kind of movement dysfunction or something to where the professional that's working with you says, okay, here's what we know to be ideal, and this is how you're moving. And because there's a little bit of a difference between what we know to be an ideal movement pattern versus how you're moving, let's try to kind of shorten that gap and get you moving closer to what can be considered to ideal, or what's ideal in that fitness professional's mind. And you've been assessed, and then you figure out, okay, here's what needs to happen. We need to increase mobility here. We need to improve strength there. And then we need to integrate that movement pattern through your body. So it can be a little deceiving sometimes, to where sometimes you've been assessed, you come up with a program, somebody feels better immediately, right? You have those moments where like, wow, this person, like, I'm sure you've done it more than a few times yourself, Wendy, where somebody squats better, or someone's tightness or discomfort kind of dissipates even a little bit, and they said, yeah, I'm feeling and moving a little bit better. But it's not like that for everybody. So with a lot of people, with, let's say, most people, it does take a little bit of time. Give it a few sessions, give it a week or two for the results to kind of take hold, to where, one example was, I had a client, Frank, and his aha moment that his corrective exercise program was working was the fact that he told me one time, right at the beginning of one session, he goes, I was able to walk down my stairs without holding onto the railing. Right? A lot of us take that for granted, just something as simple as going downstairs. But it was the first time he was able to go downstairs without having to hold on to the railing, to where he felt enough balance, enough control, enough mobility through his ankles and hips that he can take steps, and more importantly, stable enough that he can do that without support. So that took a few weeks at least for him to actually realize how our programming was working out for him. So it takes time. It's not an overnight thing. Rome wasn't built in a day, Wendy, is what I like to say.
So patience and consistency, I think, are the keys to that. So when people do talk about corrective exercise, you do need to think about where the areas of dysfunction might be. And that actually kind of leads us into the next one. But the more you do it, the more benefit you're going to have. And when I tell my clients, I want you to go home, I want you to foam roll these areas, I personally give them a home program that I want them to spend time on, whether they're foam rolling and stretching, because it's easy for them to do on their off days or when they're watching television, and then just doing some strengthening stuff. The more that you do that, again, we're looking, when we're talking about corrective exercise, we're really trying to focus in on trying to get the body to move the way that it's supposed to. So over time, we know that compensations happen because we're driving, we're sitting, we're working, we're out doing things, and that we're just trying to combat life, and we're trying to fix what we're doing in life in order to feel better every day you wake up and you're starting over. So I think when we talk about the first one being, people think they have to do it all the time, you don't have to, but you would, hopefully you would want to. And it's something, the more that you do, it becomes a habit. And then you know that this is kind of what you want to do with your warm up. The second one, Ken, I'm going to go ahead and dive in, because to me, this is the biggest one, especially working with athletes, working with the fitness enthusiasts, people that want to run the Boston Marathon. I told you about my person that I'm dealing with there. They think that corrective exercise, that they're going to either fix an injury or prevent an injury. And that really is not the case. However, we can identify dysfunction. I think that's the big thing. If we can identify dysfunction, we can help correct dysfunction. We're not necessarily fixing it, but we can help correct it. So long term, it kind of fixes itself on its own because the body's moving more optimally. And I think that is really what's key when we're talking about preventative, and it's going to prevent you from injury, because that's definitely not the case. It will help.
Yeah, it'll help. It'll help. And a guest that we've had previously on the show, Anthony Carey, one of the things that he's he gave me some insight on is that you can't predict the force or the vector at which someone's going to incur that stress that was the last straw that joint or that part of the body can handle. And meaning, it could have been you turned or you stopped. And it's not always about somebody, if you're in the physical competitive field, where it's somebody hitting you or pushing into you, like you're playing basketball, or even more of extreme situation in rugby. You can't predict that how fast or how much or which direction that your injury potential lies. But when you're incorporating a corrective exercise program, you're addressing, like you said, Wendy, those dysfunctions, and you're trying to fortify your weak spots, which is what I like to tell my athletes is you're only as strong as your weakest link, which is something we say all the time. But it doesn't mean that your fortress is impenetrable. There are going to be those weak links that, depending on how intense you are at what you do for what you want to do, the potential is there. But what corrective exercise does is that it addresses those weak links and hopefully brings down that injury potential. So when it comes to preventing injuries, we can say that we're working on or addressing your injury potential and hopefully bringing that down when it comes to the thought, the idea, the concept of injury prevention.
And I think it's important just to take a step back. When we say that we're doing assessments and we're noticing that something's not ideally moving at a joint, for example, if we're talking about the foot and ankle, you want about 20 degrees of dorsiflexion. And all dorsiflexion means is if you flex your foot and bring your toes up towards your knee, or I always say toes to your nose. If you're lacking that range of motion in your ankle, then other muscles have to help you work, or they're working harder than they're supposed to, or your joint's not aligned, because it will force your feet to go outward if you don't have the right range of motion when you're running, walking, and so on. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to downregulate the overactive muscle that is causing that compensation, and then getting the other side to fire, meaning getting that muscle that should be working as the prime mover to do its job. And if we do that, that helps realign a joint. So when we say that we're helping with the potential of injury, it's because we're getting the joints to work and get better range of motion. So when it moves our body forward or propels us forward or side to side, we're having better luck along those lines, because we're realigning the body the way that it was intended to be. Now, with that being said, when you take corrective exercise and you blend it into a proper strength program, meaning that you're training in all three planes of motion, which means forward and side to side and rotating, then you're going to have better luck, especially if you're explosive on a field, because you get what you train for. Ken, we say that all the time as well. If I'm working in all three planes of motion, I want to train in all three planes of motion. So if I have better alignment, and then I'm actually working on training my body to move the way that it was intended to move in life, then we know that we are going to help those. But to your point, if somebody's coming and you're on the football field and they knock into your knee from the side, that is a contact injury that probably could not have been avoided. So therefore, when we say it prevents it, it doesn't, because there are going to be those outside forces, which you said. However, we are helping the body move as optimally as it can by addressing those dysfunctions that we saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're listening to us, both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, on the Random Fit, and we are talking about the 5 misconceptions of corrective exercise. And if I can, Wendy, on that last point, when it comes to injury prevention, and this is one of the bigger points that I address with strength conditioning coaches more than anything else, is that if my athletes have to be powerful, if they have to be strong so they can be competitive on the field, when am I going to incorporate all of this when it comes to assessing and foam rolling and stretching and doing the steps it takes to truly address that dysfunction? Once we address when, the next question I like to answer, especially for strength coaches, is why. You brought up the ankle, Wendy, 20 degrees of ankle dorsiflexion. You've assessed more than I'd say you're in the thousands as far as the number of ankles or total body assessments that you've done, just for how long you've done it and the amount of teams and organizations that you've had a chance to work with. But how often do you find somebody with 20 degrees of ankle dorsiflexion right off the bat? 20 or 15 to 25 degrees of ankle dorsiflexion right off the bat. I don't see it all that often, right?
Me either.
Yeah. So to think about an athlete who has to run, sprint, jump, and to have less than that, what we consider ideal range of motion through the ankle, my point to strength coaches is that if you want them to be as powerful, as strong as they need to be to strength condition, to practice, and to compete, putting this into their program gets them to practice harder, gets them to do strength condition, whatever it is you want to do, squats, deadlifts, jump, work on their vertical, whatever it is that's in your program. you get them stronger and more powerful during those preparatory sessions, whether it's in the strength room or on the practice field, so that when they compete, they're tougher, they're more competitive, they can impose their will on their opponent versus their opponent imposing their will on them, compared to as if you didn't address limited ankle dorsiflexion in that example. And that in and of itself, in my mind, is injury prevention,
Mhm.
to be able to be stronger and be in a better position to encounter the forces that you're going to have to deal with when you're competing. So in my mind, and what I like to relate to strength coaches, that is injury prevention. The corrective exercise process in and of itself is not injury prevention per se, but if they're stronger than what they're going to encounter during competition, that is addressing your potential for injury when you're stronger than who you're going to compete against.
Mhm. Great points. And that kind of rolls into number 3. And this one hits home so much because I work a lot with some collegiate tennis teams. And so we have 12 to 15 professional, or not, well, some of them are turning pro, but collegiate tennis players. So they are always playing, they're playing multiple, whether they're playing singles and doubles. And I've worked a lot with the strength coaches. I've worked a lot with the head coach as well as the assistant coach. We've been working with our strength and conditioning coaches. And it's really hard for certain people that don't have this background to understand that there is not a one size fits all program. And so I have done individual assessments with these teams, and there are some common compensations that you're going to see because of the repetitive movements in the sport of tennis. And I'm using this as an example because this literally was something I talked about yesterday. And they're coming in tomorrow, so we can deal with it. But we do individualized assessments, and then at that point I design a very specific corrective exercise program for each one of those athletes because of what we've been talking about. Even though they're playing the same sport and it is the repetitive movements, it's not going to be the same. They're not going to have the exact compensations. Some people may have more mobility in their shoulders because of their serve, while other ones get locked down because their lat is overactive and it's bringing their shoulder into a forward position. So therefore, their corrective programs need to be individualized and very specific. However, when we're doing the dynamic warm-ups and we're doing things to prepare them to go out and play, that could be something that is more general based on the sport. And so in the sport of tennis, we do certain things for the shoulders, we do certain things for the back, we do certain things for their hip as well as their ankles to get the body moving correctly before they go out and play. However, each one of those guys on their phone has an individualized corrective program that takes 10 minutes or less for them to do on their own before they go out and to do the team dynamic warm-up before play. I think that's super important. Just because you're in one sport or you're doing something all the time, my issues are way different than yours. We do the
I'll
same
agree.
thing. I'm talking about movement issues.
Oh, okay.
Even though we do the same thing, we have the same career. We sit here, we do podcasts together. We end up
Yeah.
working with our clients, and we're moving weights, we're showing different exercises. If you and I were to get assessed, we would not be exact.
100%. And you just talked about something that happened recently with you, a conversation I just had with a mother of 2 kids. So I'm seeing 3 people within the same household, and all 3 have an issue with the same region of the body, which is the low back. And all 3 have different protocols, but different strategies for what they're doing to help offset that low back discomfort. One of them, it's because of the ankles, right? Calves are so tight. Another one, it's because they have limited thoracic mobility. And another one, guess what? It's the hips, right? They have a shift over to one side. So there's this asymmetry going on with the hips, which is causing or contributing to more of an uneven load on that midsection. So same region of the body for this family, this one household, but they have each different contributions to what is adding to the stress of that of that area of the body. So if I just said, hey, low back issues, okay, here, let's work on some hips, foam roll this, stretch that, strengthen that. It might work for 1 out of 3 of them, but to truly address what each one truly needs to move better, they all have their own protocols, and because they've been with me for a while now, they have progressed differently through their programming. So corrective exercise is more than just, oh, shoulder's not doing that. Okay, here are the 10 things you need to do to make that move better. It's not that case and not that way. I mean, Wendy, when we've had a chance to implement an assessment process with a full Major League Baseball organization, even they realize they need buckets. They have their ankle guys, they have their hip guys, and they have their shoulder guys. And as far as working with hundreds of players throughout a single organization, it's as individualized as you can be for that volume of staff, of that volume of players. However, the more time you can spend, the more access you have, the more individualized you can get, even though you have ankles, hips, shoulders. Then what can you do to specialize or individualize the ankles, individualize the hips, and individualize the shoulders? So the one size fits all, you can go in with a general approach, but to truly help an individual move better, you have to dive deeper and see what's going to be appropriate for them, but also see what they're going to do, see what they're going to comply with, see what they like. If it's something that they don't like, it's not going to happen. So compliance on top of what the needs are, those 2 points work hand in hand, especially when it comes to that individualized approach.
Yep. And that brings us to when you say compliance, number 4, this is a big one, is that you have to have all this equipment in order to do corrective exercise. Now, in my personal opinion, every one of my clients has to have, meaning I make them go purchase it, or I'll give it to them as a Christmas present. They need to have some sort of foam roller or some form of percussion device to down-regulate the overactivity of the muscles. And I want them to do this at home. The foam roller is cheap. It's easy. It's something that they can have at home, but they have to do it. So when they say that they need all this equipment, all I have, even in my own house, when I'm doing my personal correctives, is a band and a foam roller. Well, and a gun, but I choose the percussion device because I can sit there and I put heat on it, thanks to you, Ken. And it helps relax those muscles that are overactive. So guys, it doesn't have to be that you have to have this full gym available. This is stuff you can do at home. And that's what I try to tell my clients. I want you to think, what are the 2 things you need? Buy a foam roller, get this type of band. And I'll explain, because some bands may be different. Some are the loops where it's more tube walking, things to get the outer hip firing, clamshells, and so forth. Some of it may be, like you said, thoracic issues. I want them to get some thoracic mobility utilizing that foam roller, and then getting a tube with a handle. So therefore they can do some rows and some cobras and things to open up and get the mid to lower back to actually fire the way that it's supposed to. So when we talk about having a bunch of equipment, I ask them, what do you already have? And then suggest, this is what I would love for you to invest in order to better your health. What is your health worth? And if they can spend $10, $15, $20 on a foam roller, and the bands are even cheaper, it's something that everybody can do. And cost shouldn't be an issue because it is very limited equipment. And half of the other times it's bridges, planks, things that require no equipment at all. It's just body weight and what you already have, which is your body, yourself.
Yeah. At the very least, I agree 100%. A minimal investment of a foam roller. And even if you think about it, when I took my last trip overseas, I had with me a lacrosse ball, a mini band, and I took one of those, maybe a 1/2-inch resistance band. That was it. It fits into one little small satchel, and that's what I got. And depending on the trip and how long I'm gone, like you said, Wendy, I'll take my hypervolt with me and and maybe the Normatec Go just to help with compression while I'm on a longer flight. Because you and I have been on those flights where you're sitting there 18 hours, right? Or you're in a chair, and that's just to help offset some tension. But like you said, if you have nothing at home, something to help relieve tension, like the roller, something to implement resistance, mini band at the very least, and then if you want to go crazy, you might have other pieces of equipment. The initial investment of my average client, if they have nothing, is going to be $40 or less, depending on the type of roller. And the roller is going to be the bigger investment that you're going to make when it comes to something that doesn't require a battery or a motor. So something that's just a simple piece of plastic and foam. $40 at the most when it comes to making that initial investment. You can go crazy. You can spend for the same pieces of equipment or get the same purpose. You can spend $200-$300 if you want. And there's a lot of great stuff out there that'll enhance the process, but you don't need a whole lot, right? You can go as crazy as you want, but you don't need a whole lot.
Mm-hmm. And number 5, this is another big one because we get this from our trainers that are asking. I know, Ken, you get this question, I get this question. And so we wanted to make this big finale, number 5 of misconceptions with corrective exercise. I think the big one is it a standalone program or what? I don't understand when to incorporate it, how often I incorporate it, if I'm foam rolling these few muscles, if I'm activating the other side, which is the same amount of muscles, but if I'm foam rolling 4 things, I'm doing activation on the 4 other sides of those things that we just rolled and stretched. And then we might do one full body, total body, squat to row, step up, curl to press, whatever the case may be based on the corrective program itself. If somebody only has 15 minutes, then that's a standalone workout for them because it's going to help them and move better. That to me can be a standalone, and that's it. If you only have that amount of time, do that corrective program. You're still activating muscles. You're still getting your heart rate up if you're going from one thing to another. It doesn't have to be this long drug out process. However, if you're in a gym and you have an hour to work out, you'll foam roll, you'll stretch the muscles that need to be stretched. You're going to then activate maybe 2 or 3 different muscle groups. Then you're going to do one total body, and then you can go do any muscles that you want. So if you want to individualize and do chest and then do your rows for your back and then do your gun shows, so the arms and so bis and tris and shoulders, go for it. But just prepare your body. Basically, the corrective program should be your movement prep. And that's how I explain it to my clients. This is your extended warm up. So therefore, when you do your body parts in your resistance in the gym, you're going to feel better and you're going to move better and you're going to have better results because you have better range of motion at that joint to get whatever motion done. So if you're really jammed up in certain muscles, you're not going to be able to get, if it's your hips, you're not going to be able to get full extension, meaning get your glutes to fire to their maximum potential. Will they still fire? Yes. Your glutes are always going to fire, but how much are you lacking? Meaning if you're restricted at your hips, you're not going to get as much contraction as if you opened up your hips first, warmed up your glutes, and then got better range of motion through your hips. So when you're doing your squats or whatever it is, you're going to have better initial movement. And so I think that's the big one too. You have the choice. Does it have to be a standalone? No. I use it as the warm up. Can you do some of the corrective steps again at the cool down? Absolutely. We want everyone to foam roll. We want everyone to stretch. We want everyone to be able to do what they want to do, but just help yourself prepare right first. And then you're going to have better quality in the gym. And that's what I try to really stress. You can do what you want with it. Just do it. Add it in there.
Add it in there. And it's, I mean, life is a zero-sum equation. And you may not have, to your point, Wendy, you may not have the 45 minutes to do a full corrective exercise routine. But if you did one of each one of those steps to help a joint or a region of the body move a little bit better, it can be as short as 5 or 6 minutes, depending on how much time you want to spend on it. So that idea of an intelligent or a smart warm-up, or like you said, Wendy, with movement preparation that's specifically designed for you, you're going to move better. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time. You just have to figure out, where am I going to get the most bang for my buck when it comes to which area of the body I want to address more. So a movement assessment that has addressed some of the bigger compensation patterns. And if you hit those first, that's going to help you move a little bit better. Or finding an area of the body that affects another area of the body a little bit more, from that, not to get too much into the weeds, but that regional interdependence where one area of the body can depend on another. But if you can figure out what works best, what's going to have the higher level of impact, if you do that, spend 5-6 minutes at that, there you go. You've done it, right? You can check off that box and then get into your workout.
I love it. Well, thank you, Ken, for talking about these 5 misconceptions of corrective exercise. So if you missed any of it, you definitely want to rewind and go back. But just for a recap, number 1, people think you have to do it all the time. You don't have to do it all the time, but you get what you get. So you get what you train for. You want to move better, feel better, perform better, find those muscles that are lacking the activation that they need, and calm down those muscles that are causing some of those compensations, and you're going to be golden. Number 2, remember, it will not prevent injuries. It will help you move better and perform better, but injuries can happen, especially if they're contact injuries. You're just trying to better your body. Number 3, one size fits all approach. Remember, everyone is different. Everybody's assessment results are going to be different. Even if there's common compensations, my assessment would be different than Ken's. And so we were going to have different types of corrective programs. Number 4, you don't need a lot of equipment. We talked a lot about that. And number 5, it can be a standalone or it can be an integration. It depends on your timing. It depends on your outcome. It depends on your goals. And I think if you can keep all of that in your mind when you're thinking about corrective exercise and how beneficial it can be for you and your workout, you're going to be way more successful, I think.
I agree.
Oh, you know what, Ken? I want to say this too. I want to thank all of our listeners. We were talking about this earlier. We feel very blessed to have you guys watching the Random Fit podcast. And as a thank you, we want to give you guys an opportunity to win a $100 Amazon gift card that you will find a link in our show notes. Those show notes also tells you what we just talked about. However, when you click that, you answer a short survey and you get a chance to win this gift card. But throughout that survey, it also lets Ken and I know what more we can do to help benefit you and to bring you the content and information you would like for us to talk about. So take a couple seconds, fill out that survey, and let us know what we can do to better our podcast show for you.
Perfect, because that's all we want. We want to give you the content and information you're looking forward to help you integrate fitness better into your lives, or if at least a different way. So Wendy, thanks for sharing your insights when it comes to this topic of corrective exercises. I know that it's a big benefit. If you can find a way to make it a part of your life, hopefully we'll find a way to do that for you. So thank you everybody for listening to both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, here on Random Fit. Like, follow, subscribe, share, and more importantly, comment. Fill out that little survey. Don't forget to do that. Let us know what you want us to talk about in future episodes, and we'll do the best we can to get that on there for you. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.